Kiyotaka Ichiji, or just Ichiji as we know him, is the beating heart of Jujutsu Society. Despite his lack of combat efficiency, he is still one of, if not the most trusted of Gojo's allies, as well as one of the more knowledgeable sorcerers we see in the series, giving us a lot of our early exposition about Jujutsu Society. However, despite his very important role in the aforementioned Jujutsu Society, we know a surprisingly small amount about him. I mean, turns out he uses Shikigami. Did you know that? I didn't until recently. We know so little about him, yet he is the closest thing to a cog in the system present in the story. I wish we could have seen more of his relationships with his colleagues in the manga. Well, lucky for me, the light novels give us a little bit more to chew on in regards to Ichiji's personality and his relationships with his fellow sorcerers. In this video, I will be taking a look at the 4th story from the first light novel. The story itself takes place just after Yuji's initial demise to the Finger Bearer special grade curse. After his resurrection, as we see in the main series, Yuji is forced into hiding and spends his time training by watching movies in a small hideout underground that Gojo put him in. In this story, however, Gojo sends Yuji over to Ichiji's place since Gojo is going on a mission and doesn't have time to keep an eye on Yuji. In this story, our boys Ichiji and Yuji take center stage as we see what the veteran sorcerer's life is like, what he does for fun, and other little snippets about him. But genuinely, this little story gives Ichiji's seemingly unassuming character a nice bit of depth that makes me like him a lot more. And I'm not saying this sarcastically, but this light novel made me like Ichiji more than I like Gojo. I was never a Gojo fan to begin with, but big ups Team Ichiji, right? I've covered 3 other stories from the light novels in the past, so feel free to check them out, but without further ado, let's get straight into story number 4, Ichiji at work. The story starts on a hot August day. Here we have Yuji sprawled out on a couch, a similar scene we have once seen before. After the detention center business and Yuji's training arc, we would see him laying down on a couch in a similar way, watching films. However, this time, it's different. Instead of happily watching movies provided to him by Gojo, he's stuck inside a pretty unassuming apartment. Ichiji's apartment. It's Yuji's first day here. You see, Gojo has a mission a good distance away, so Gojo places Yuji with the main man he trusts the most, Ichiji. Granted, Gojo is a bit rude to Ichiji, to put it lightly, but he still has trust in Ichiji's abilities and his character. Gojo leaving Yuji with him highlights this fact. Page 87. I have to go on a business trip. It isn't close, so I may be gone for a few days. It probably isn't great to hide in the same place indefinitely, so stick by Ichiji's side for a while. You may even have some fun. That's what Gojo had said, and that's how Itadori ended up crashing at Ichiji's place for a few days. Before this point, Yuji's life as a sorcerer had been almost exclusively eventful, never a chance for respite, so he never had a chance to be bored. He was training with Megumi and Nobara, or he was exercising cursed spirits, and then after that, he literally died and spent his time after that watching films, living and hiding away from Jujutsu Society, and getting punched by this lovely fella, Tsukamoto. That's what the little bear is called. Yet, as soon as Yuji gets a moment of peace to relax away from the possible headaches of curses and being punched in the head by a boxing bear, he's bored. Page 87 again. If it is true that boredom is a poison to the heart, then Itadori had already received a fatal dose. As Yuji is wondering what could relieve his boredom inside of Ichiji's apartment, Yuji remarks that even when the man himself returns to his humble abode, all Ichiji does is stare at his computer screen. It seems that Ichiji isn't as free of things to do as Yuji is. Yuji, curious about what Ichiji was doing, asks if he's reading a blog. However, as Yuji looks over at the veteran sorcerer's screen, his eyes are met with a smorgasbord of information, charts, numbers, taxes, faxes, assets, cash flow. Being able to decipher it would take a real pro. It's clear from a glance that Ichiji was working here, so Yuji makes sure not to make too much noise as to not bother him or interrupt him. So, Yuji quickly asks if he can make use of Ichiji's nearby bookshelf. Page 88. Ichiji, mind if I read a book? He asked. Not at all. Take whatever you want from the bookshelves. Is this one called Leviathan, a fantasy novel? No, it's assigned reading in political philosophy. Ichiji said. You got any manga? My parents have some old ones back home. The situation was desperate. Itadori found a book that looked vaguely like a novel, read a few pages, realised it wasn't for him, and quit. With no other recourse, he flipped on the TV and turned the volume down low. While this sounds like a good idea initially, it was during the middle of the week and around daytime, so there wasn't really anything good on. Just like in real life, all that was on TV around this time was boring daytime talk shows and just boring stuff that Yuji very much wasn't the target audience for, like news programs, celebrity talks, and standard channel surfing fodder. He settles with watching some sort of food show, Yuji comments to himself that it feels kind of weird to be watching TV at this time of day. Ichiji replies that it's probably due to the fact that Yuji would usually be in school at this time of day. This snippet interaction gets Yuji thinking that a little bit of conversation shouldn't interfere with Ichiji's work, so they start to have a real conversation. Yuji asks if this apartment is where he does most of his work. Ichiji replies that he can work from home as long as it doesn't impact his efficiency. Ichiji adds that most companies wouldn't be as relaxed about letting their employees work from home. Yuji then realizes that despite him dealing with adult sorcerers quite regularly since becoming a sorcerer himself, his actual knowledge of standard office work and how companies are organized is significantly lacking, so he didn't really understand what Ichiji meant by this. But as soon as Yuji turns his back towards the television, he notices a familiar face that I promise you we're not expecting. Page 89. Oh hey, Takada-chan's a guest. Is she famous? Itadori had spoken under his breath, but Ichiji replied anyway. If the man was interested, Itadori thought this might be an effective way to kick off a conversation. Yeah, she's been showing off more skin lately because she just does whatever she wants. She's cute, but she's tall, so you might not notice it. I love that incongruity. Oh, is that what's trendy these days? Asked Itadori. Come to think of it, she had a small role in that drama that used to be on at 9 o'clock on Monday nights. So yeah, it turns out that Ichiji is a little bit of a Takada-chan fan, which is so funny to think about in my opinion because people have always wondered how certain characters would interact to being asked Todo and Yuki's iconic question. And out of all the people who would probably fail it, Ichiji might actually pass it with flying colours. Ichiji, of all people, passes the Todo taste test. What a lad. Anyway, the story. The two continue their conversation. Yuji goes through a list of TV show genres and tries to figure out what Ichiji actually watches in his spare time. He doesn't watch modern dramas, though he used to watch some older ones. He doesn't watch anything sports themed, as he isn't athletic himself. He doesn't watch primetime or late night TV either. So what the hell does Ichiji watch? Well, funnily enough, Ichiji likes to watch Rakugo shows. Now, for the uninformed, like myself before writing this script, who don't know what Rakugo shows are, well, as it turns out, Ichiji probably would have gotten along well with Takaba and Kajaku to some extent, since out of all the shows he actually watches, he watches daytime Rakugo, which is basically like classical, old school Japanese stand-up comedy, except that they're actually sat down instead of, you know, stood up. So Ichiji likes comedy as well. So Takaba could be friends with Ichiji. That's kind of dope. However, Yuji, despite spending a lot of his spare time watching TV, doesn't really watch Rakugo as it's pretty uncool and it's usually on during Sunday evenings when most students are out having fun. So Yuji is kind of shut down conversationally. Him and Ichiji seemingly have nothing in common at all. But as Yuji is starting to feel a bit awkward, he notices that Ichiji has stopped typing because of the two's conversation. So Yuji turns around to continue to watch Takada-chan on the TV. Right now, the stuff he's watching is neither boring nor interesting, and in combination with him sitting on a sofa and the warm weather, he starts to nod off and fall asleep. Page 91, Itadori. I have to go out on some business. Itadori started upright. Oh, Metal Tamori. Metal Tamori? Ichiji gave a puzzled look. Oops, sorry, I guess I was nodding off. I was having the weirdest dream. What kind of dream was it? It's kind of fuzzy now, Itadori responded. Anyway, are we going out? If you're sleepy, there's no need to force yourself. Feel free to stay here and sleep. No, I want to go out. I need to photosynthesize. So it's decided that Yuji is going to tag along with Ichiji. However, since Yuji had recently died, his identity still needs to be concealed from the higher-ups. So Ichiji gives him a set of his personal sunglasses to help conceal his identity. Yuji gets hyped with the idea of walking around with Ichiji wearing sunglasses, and Yuji reminisces that it reminds him of Men in Black, of all things. Ichiji then says that he tends to do a lot of investigative work, and he wears sunglasses sometimes as cursors are extremely perceptive to the eye and can tell when people are looking at them, so he has to hide his eyes and where he's looking a lot. Yuji then asks if Gojo wears a blindfold for the same reason, to which Ichiji replies that Gojo wears a blindfold for a much different reason than Ichiji wearing sunglasses. I mean, why would Gojo care if a curse knows that he's looking at it? Page 91 again. Itadori put on the sunglasses, then he looked back and forth between the mirror and Ichiji. He put his hands on his chin and struck a pose. How do I look, Ichiji? Like a secret agent? Ichiji thought Itadori looked like a young hooligan, but Ichiji was an adult, so he kept this to himself. And if you couldn't tell, this interaction is where we get this nice piece of art from Gege in this story. As I've said before, each story in the light novels, at least in the first book, has an accompanying art piece to help the reader visualize the story, and this is the one we get for this Ichiji story. Pretty nice. We then read of the two simply driving along the highway. Yuji, being the country bumpkin he is fascinated by the scenery sweeping past his vision as the two were driving around in Tokyo. And since Yuji hasn't really had time to explore Tokyo, he's fascinated by everything in his field of view. Ichiji says that the two are taking the highway route because the streets tend to be crowded around this time of day. And since the car the two are in is owned by Jujutsu Tech, Ichiji is very careful about not damaging it. From Ichiji telling him this, Itadori gets the sense that being an adult with a car wasn't as simple and as easy as he once envisioned. As Ichiji takes an exit off the highway and enters the more populated streets with heavy traffic, Ichiji's worries of damaging the car spreads to Yuji as he grows with worry as cars drive past or get close to the car they're in. Eventually, however, the two reach their destination, the nearby ward office, which is basically like a local government building, right? Ichiji reveals that they've come here to simply deliver some documents, pulling a set of papers out of his work bag as he speaks. Curious, Yuji peeks inside the work bag and sees stacks of documents inside. Ichiji then explains what they're actually doing here. Page 94. Applications for permission to use sites in need of cursed spirit countermeasures, requests for closure of public facilities, applications for permission to perform road work, rosters of on-site personnel with accompanying proof of insurance, and so on. Yuji is confused by this. Why not just put up a curtain? Ichiji explains that yes, that keeps people aware, but if it's something that takes a long period of time, people would grow curious and confused as to why they can't use certain roads or facilities. Yuji retorts that he thought Jujutsu Tech worked with the government for aid with cursed spirits and keeping the peace with non-sorcerers. So Ichiji explains. Page 95. Yes, but to all appearances, Jujutsu High is a private school, so it requires the documentation of a private school, and if that isn't enough, further documentation is necessary to prove to regular society that nothing unusual is going on. Thus, putting up a sign reading falling rock removal requires paperwork. Oh, it's more of a hassle than I thought. Of course, Ichiji said, and I also have to provide explanations in person. Ichiji then heads into the office the two arrived at whilst Yuji waits outside. Whilst waiting, however, Yuji sees what it means to be a sorcerer in a different light, so to speak. Page 96. It's more difficult than I thought to preserve our regular daily life. Next, the two head to another office building. The business inside supplies and installs vending machines. Yuji questions if all of a sudden curses have been haunting vending machines or something like that. Ichiji replies, no, it's just the people here supply and install all the vending machines at Jujutsu High. Ichiji teaches Yuji that the outside world also views Jujutsu High as a somewhat religious institution, so they need to have as few non-sorcerers knowing what's going on inside of Jujutsu Tech as possible. And on top of that, at the end of the day, this is a business relationship, so to speak. Personal visits to companies you're friendly with are very important. Ichiji then asks Yuji what his favourite drink is, and jokingly Ichiji says that he'll mention it to the people inside, and his favourite drink might be stocked up in the vending machines next time he's at Jujutsu High. Page 97. Itadori bowed as he watched Ichiji walk into the office building. When Ichiji returned a few minutes later, a good-natured man in work clothes was with him. Apparently he wanted to see Ichiji off. Itadori watched the man offer a polite bow, which Ichiji returned. For a moment, Itadori thought maybe he should join in. Then he remembered he was officially dead at the moment. The two drive away, but they are very quickly interrupted by Ichiji's phone ringing. Ichiji stops the car and picks up the phone. It's Gojo! He needs Ichiji to give him details on a nearby window. You may not remember this, but very early in the series, Ichiji explains what a window is, but he explains it here as well, so I'll just use this quote. Page 98. A window is someone who isn't a sorcerer, but who is affiliated with Jujutsu High, and who can see curses. Windows can trace curses and assist investigations. Oh, okay, said Itadori. I heard about that when we went to the detention center. Ichiji's shoulders tensed, and his fingers, which had been flipping through memo pages, froze. Yuji then asked Ichiji why he has both a memo pad and a smartphone, to which Ichiji says that he pretty much has to know about every single window in all of Japan. Yuji is baffled by this. It's way too much to have to remember or write down. Ichiji retorts that it's basically because despite Gojo's level of intelligence and good memory, he refuses to make an effort to remember anything and forces Ichiji to remember it all. He even asks Ichiji about train timetables and convenience store sweets, all because he refuses to put the effort into remembering anything. As Ichiji was complaining to Yuji about the strongest sorcerer's annoying personality, he finds the info he needs and calls Gojo back. Page 99. Hello? Gojo? In that area? Hey, I did it as fast as I could. Yes, I did once call you back in under a minute, but what do I care if your ice cream melted while you were waiting? Why would you slap me when you get back? Make a memo for it? How can you say that to me? No, I refuse to schedule myself for a completely unjustified lecture. So just forget it. Whoa. Within the confines of the car, Itadori could clearly overhear Gojo chewing out Ichiji. The ridiculousness of it even got on Itadori's nerves. Oh, don't worry though. Gojo has even more mundane and annoying stuff to complain to Ichiji about. Page 99 again. Huh? Yes. Now that you mentioned it, you used the principal's cursed corpse for training. What about it? Huh? You took it without permission, and you want me to put it back. Where is... It's lying out in the open in the basement, huh? Well, Fest... Yes? Uh-huh. Mm-hmm. Understood. I'll be sure to fetch it. You added more movies to the film collection. No, you can't claim that as a business expense. No, absolutely not. Out of the question. Yes? Yes. I'll do my best. Today, Ichiji was running errands both large and small. Itadori stared at him intently. That guy sure has it rough. Before they knew it, the sun was starting to fall. The two had been running errands for the majority of the day. Ichiji states that the day took a little bit longer than expected. Yuji adds that it's Gojo's fault they were out so long anyway. However, despite the two's complaints, Ichiji does give Gojo credit where it's due. Page 100. He is dependable, but he's not much of an adult. You're not wrong about his dependability. He's strong and kind, but he has a way of, pushing people past their limit. Yeah, I totally get that. Yet, he has a soft spot for you students. Ichiji noted. Definitely. Itadori agrees. He's always done right by me. Agreed. I hate to admit it, but he's talented and charismatic. Many of the sorcerers look up to him, although I do hate to admit it. It's clear that the atmosphere between the two, after spending the whole day together, and with Yuji getting a glimpse into Ichiji's busy and important yet relatively uneventful work life, the atmosphere between the two had lightened up, and became much more comfortable. Page 100 again. You sure have a busy schedule, Ichiji. Ichiji responded with a half smile. Did I look that busy to you? Well, you calculate stuff and handle documents and visit people and serve as Gojo Sensei's errand boy, and that bit about errand boy was unnecessary. Sorry, Itadori said. But despite being so busy, you don't do much sorcerer-type work. It's pretty unexciting, isn't it? Honestly, yes. I admire your bluntness, Ichiji said. Anyway, fighting is outside my expertise. And Gojo-sensei makes up for it by pushing all sorts of work onto you? Yes, I guess he does. Ichiji then expressed that most sorcerers believe that they live outside of modern society, detached from it. But they aren't. Normal human society and sorcerers are tied together, and that means Ichiji has to perform all these countless mundane and dull tasks. Page 101. Thank you, Ichiji, he said. What made you say that all of a sudden? Your work is really unexciting. Yes, what about it? Did that need repeating? Ichiji said. It's just, I realize that thanks to your unexciting, painstaking work, sorcerers retain ties to the rest of the world. I'm thankful for that. You are, huh? Ichiji's voice was faint. Despite how wholesome this interaction may seem on the surface, it's not how it appears. Yuji's gratitude leaves Ichiji with a grim expression, saddened even. Ichiji says that Yuji shouldn't be given thanks. Ichiji himself should be apologizing. Page 102. Huh? What for? He had never imagined an apology was necessary and couldn't guess the reason. The childlike, ingenuous expression on his face showed his utter confusion. Ichiji frowned. His next words came haltingly. The other day, I sent you into a deadly situation. Oh, that! Itadori recalled the series of fights against the special grade cursed spirit. That had indeed been a bitter experience, but he didn't hold it against Ichiji. Ichiji's voice only became more grave. I said it was merely an evacuation. I also warned you not to engage. I didn't mean to fail in my obligations as assistant manager, but at the very least, that was no place to send Festiers. And you were the resultant sacrifice. Yeah, but I'm right here, alive and well, aren't I? After having dying once, Yuji wants to make light of the situation and try and help Ichiji feel better, but after hearing Ichiji's voice tremble, he thinks to himself, he has had those close to him die, sure. Yuji himself has died even, yet he hasn't felt that he was the reason for someone else's death, which is why Ichiji is clearly feeling so guilty. Yuji then feels this instant wave of regret go through him. Page 102 again. I told you it wouldn't be so bad. I'm a sorcerer who can't fight. An adult whose job is sending students, all younger than me, on dangerous missions. You've come back from the dead, but I will send you back into battle. The sound of the engine drowned out the sound of Ichiji's swallowing. As an adult, I want to lend seamless support to your missions, and I'll try to do better. Ichiji. After seeing how tirelessly Ichiji works throughout the day, Yuji had seen how dedicated Ichiji is. What Ichiji had been doing today was his form of atonement in his own eyes, doing as best a job as he possibly could. Page 103. I vow to do my job, Ichiji said. Ichiji's voice was deeply apologetic and low, as if a weight were crushing it. It didn't have Gojo's dependability or the principal's severity. Instead, it expressed intense worry and sincerity. Ichiji couldn't fight, but he would never allow himself to say, I won't let you die again. Despite how he felt, he had to send Itadori on more missions. Itadori had no idea how disheartening that must have been to a conscientious adult. He did understand, however, that Ichiji's words expressed his innermost feelings and carried the meaning of what he wanted to most convey. So he received them, accepted them, and smiled. Like I said, thanks, Ichiji. Itadori spoke softly as he looked at his reflection in the window. I'll probably keep being reckless and make you worry, but that's my choice. I'm not going to stop. That's just how you are, right? Yeah, but I'm going to get stronger. so you don't have to worry about me forever, Ichiji, and you'll help me, won't you? With the things I don't understand or know, and stuff that takes more than fighting to solve. Yes, I will, Ichiji said. This wholesome moment leaves Ichiji trembling, almost crying, but his eyes remain focused on the road. But as the drive continues, Yuji asks if Ichiji is heading home. He says he is, but the two haven't eaten anything yet. They should go out somewhere nice to eat. Ichiji lets Yuji decide. Page 104. Steak or yakiniku? Which will it be? Oh, that's the ultimate dilemma. Wait 20 minutes while I think about it. That's too long. Their laughter filled the vehicle. The car's taillights streamed through the night as if shaking off teardrops. The end. Overall, this story, despite starting out relatively dull, in my opinion, gave me a lot more love for Ichiji than I expected. Ichiji is a strange outlier in the world of JJK, despite being a veteran sorcerer. He cannot fight. Despite that, however, he is the one driving children to dangerous missions that sometimes result in their death. He isn't a powerful sorcerer like Gojo or Nanami, yet he retains the guilt of being the person that sometimes drives these young sorcerers to meet their demise, whilst at the same time being the linchpin that prevents the normal human world and the world of sorcery from falling apart, drowning in chaos and collapsing in on themselves. He feels guilt for being the person who sent the Festiers to the detention centre. Yes, he told them to escape and to not engage, that it was only an evacuation, but that doesn't mean anything. He still feels the guilt of being the ones who sent them there. This story added a lot more depth to Ichiji in my opinion. It brought light to the fact that Ichiji could probably become good friends with not only Takaba, due to them both enjoying watching comedy, but also Todo, due to the two's shared knowledge and fondness of Takada-chan. And to be honest, I've never been the biggest fan of Yuji, but the emotional maturity and understanding he showed Ichiji in the story made me like him a little bit more. As I said though, it started off mundane, with Yuji and Ichiji stuck outside doing simple odd jobs to keep Jujutsu Tech and its actions hidden through paperwork and standard boring activities that wouldn't be out of place for any average office worker. But it ended with us, or at least me, viewing Ichiji in a much more positive and fond light. Toodles my doodles, hopefully see you in the next one. Peace.